I think we'll see a good amount, especially once we start cracking 10 cents. Personally, I mean, I don't really know. It's not a very strong opinion, but I could see it. I could see it happening. And it'll be interesting to see how the market prices that in, because it's longer term bullish, shorter term bearish. So it's like inflation that was coming out later comes out today. So, you know, we're going to eat our lunch a little bit earlier than we thought based on what the thing is, but the inflation going out further in the future is going to be decreased. So their ability to get that compounding effect for the T-shares that are getting more rare and the payouts going up as a factor of that, you know, there are less people with that power going forward. So it's like, if we see a substantial amount of EESers, and one of the main reasons I think it might happen is the trauma from last cycle, watching your stakes go up like so crazy and then being locked up. I think there's enough people who are going to say, no, I'm just taking the money at this point and running. When even if they take a hit to their principal, like they do a negative ROI in HEX terms, like they're not going to really care because they could have, if they did a negative ROI at the top of the last cycle at 50 cents, even doing that, selling it, and then buying back in now, they would have more HEX than if they continued it with their stakes. Now, that assumes perfect trading, which is a big assumption in the first place. But retroactively, you can make the assumption that you would have done that. So you might behave as if you would have done that, which increases your internal probability that you think you can do it going forward. So like from that like perspective, I could see people doing it because they're like, oh, I have the money now I'll buy in lower next cycle. Which then it becomes a question of how bullish does that make this people with cash on the sidelines, that less inflation is going out into the future, and are those sells met with new bids coming in? That's the real question, but I do think we see some.
I agree with you, but overall, that's just like the T-share metagame. And if anything, this conversation has proven that the T-share metagame is very real, which is that assuming everything you just said is correct, which is that theoretically, should people feel that emergency unstaking is more valuable than holding and trying to like hope that it survives multiple cycles, that means that people will be emergency unstaking. So T-share payout's going to go up. They perceive that the value they have now is higher than a theoretical negative value in the future. But what that means is that the T-shares in the future are only going to be more and more valuable. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the T-share rate today is around 40,000 HEX per T-share, which means that I think we're about 4x up on T-share price per HEX overall. And what that means is that if there are people that are able, they will be able, probably, assuming everything you just said is true, they will be able to emergency unstake, or at least just take out some smaller stakes or shorter stakes, still make profit on it. But at the same time, what that does is it means that the stakes further down the road are only going to be more and more valuable. So it's all just a question about trying to figure out the math of like doing the buy low, sell high thing, or just lock it up long term and just really soar into the future. It's a complicated game, and there's multiple correct answers, and I think it just rewards different people based on their different strategies and their different proclivities, shall we say. Because if you're in for the 4 or 5 year thing and you do well, hey, hats off to you, absolutely. But at the same time, the more people that emergency unstake and really stick the course and are able to take it into the future, assuming price continues to do normal price things and just doesn't go to zero, which I don't think it will, it means that there's going to be a multitude of strategies that are going to make money at different points in different ways. So it's a complicated metagame, but overall, it looks positive in my opinion.
I want to make the meme that's like millionaire, liquid HEX, billionaire stake for 5 years, trillionaire stake for 5. Like I really hope it plays out that way too, because again, the whole thing, delayed gratification, you get an opportunity cost, keeping it liquid. People are going to trade it. People are going to, emergency and stake it and stuff too. That's the cool thing about the game. There's all these options available, and you get to choose which one you want to do. But,
for sure. And I hope that all those strategies are viable too, because the more strategies that are viable, it allows more people to enter the space and have optimism and hope that what they're doing is going to work. Obviously, I think a lot of the OG HEX skins and the true believers, shall we say, are the Quattro Cinco gang or the HEX staking ladder. So if we can keep that viable, also keep maybe some shorter term hands viable as well, you're not going to see like crazy stupid gains, but you'll still see X's for sure. The more strategies that are able to be viable, I think the better, because it allows many different people to play many different games and all still come out on top.
You need a little bit of everybody. That's true.
Exactly.
Yep. What was I going to say? Oh yeah. I don't know what it's called. There's a name for it, but it's like that law or whatever. That it's like the longer something's been around, the more likely it's going to stick around in the future. That kind of thing. So as time goes on, especially if we survive this bear market, and by survive I mean make a new all-time high. So PHEX gets above 50 cents. Basically, is what I would say is making a new all-time high. Um, Doing that, like it really doesn't get that much worse than what we've gone through these last like 2 or 3 years. Very like we have Richard Hart going silent, SEC case, already massive
Lindy
price
effect, by the way.
depreciation. Yeah, Lindy effect. Thank you. Price depreciation before PulseChain had even gone on, like 99% dip basically from the all-time high. What's the other thing? The liquidity being split up from 1 token to 5 token. That was a big major ecosystem shift. Like we had a bunch of really crazy things that would have any single one of them could kill other communities. Like nail in the coffin. Like one of those things could be a nail in the coffin for some other community. But surviving this and making a new all-time high afterwards increases the likelihood by a dramatic amount that it will survive more going into the future, and which makes it easier to commit for longer because you have a higher degree of confidence that it'll be around for that time. Versus in the early days, like who really, like, you didn't really know, like you're speculating and you're making like hey, like this is an experiment, let's see what happens. But it becomes more sophisticated after you get tested and survive it. Because as much as we like to bull post and be excited and say, of course HEX is going to survive, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread was put on the internet. Like I don't know, where's I going with that?
True.
It wasn't a guarantee. It wasn't a guarantee, right? Like there was risk of it failing in terms of not getting adoption from people. And if there wasn't that risk, there wouldn't have been the returns that were available. So
Exactly.
yeah. That's
Plus, shout out to you, my man. The last time I was in Vegas hanging out with you, you actually dropped that nugget of wisdom on me that really kind of made me have some perspective, which was that it's very easy, especially for like OG Bitcoiners and stuff, to look at where everything is now. And shoot, you told me this like a year and a half ago when Bitcoin was down at like 15, 25K. Like, yeah, it's very easy to look back and be like, oh, wow, of course it was doing great. The price went up like 1,000x. But yeah, that's survivorship bias is what it is. Yeah. It's very easy to look at the winners and be like, why can't they all do that? But the reality is not everything did it. And taking the survivorship bias into your thought process is very important. And that's the thing that you taught me on that one, which is it's very easy to look back and think that there's money everywhere. But the unfortunate thing is that in the crypto space in particular is that there's also a lot of rugs too. You got to find those quality projects. And I think the quality projects show with the Lindy effect, like you talked about, which is that the ones that really last the test of time, they perpetuate themselves further into the future, the higher probability of lasting, but they also just stick around and price appreciate. So if you're able to stick around one cycle, odds are you'll probably make it another one.
Yeah, following Richard before HEX too. I mean, when he first came out, there was CFT token, and they went on to HEX and stuff too. It was at the time. I remember thinking, hey, Richard's awesome, but he never made a token before. Is this going to work? Like literally, I was like, it may work, it may not work out. That kind of thing. And then once it launched, she was like, oh, okay, well, things seem to be working. Okay, interesting. And then we just see this meteoric rise from there. But yeah, and in the beginning, exactly, it's like you just don't know. And then like it looks back silly. Oh, how could we doubt? RH was going to have a successful product and stuff. And people are going to build on it, and it's become this movement and PulseChain, all this stuff else. But at the time, it was like, yeah, this Bitcoin Maxi just made a coin, and he said a lot of smart stuff about it, but is it really going to work out?